Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you are having a good day. The Browns got a much-needed win over the Jaguars on the road in Jacksonville yesterday. Kevin Stefanski addressed his team in the locker room, then talked today about getting that much-needed win.
How about that team win? Hey! The team. How about that offense, that defense, that special team win? Corey pins him back. Safety next play by 91. Fellas, all we could do this week is get on an airplane and go 1-0. Right? That's all we could do. So we took care of business today. Guess what we got to do next week? Same thing. All right? That's the NFL, man. It comes at you every week. What we have to do in this room, we have to do this. We have to stay committed to getting better. Hey, it's September. We're not playing our best yet. But we have to stay committed to playing better as a team. But I'm proud of you guys for fighting. I'm proud of the offense. I'm proud of the defense. I'm proud of special teams, fellas, because at this point, we need everybody, and everybody showed up. And I appreciate you guys. Fellas, that's a hell of a team win on the road, AFC opponent. I'm proud of you guys. Team on three. 1, 2, 3.
Like we talked last night, wasn't perfect, wasn't always pretty, but it was gritty. And I thought the guys, found a way there, and it's certainly a learning experience. I think win, lose, or draw, you got to learn from these things.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Scott, I guess it's a 180. Against the Cowboys, it was the offense that was bad, the defense that was bad, the special teams that were bad, and all three of them had a hand in the win against Jacksonville. 1-1. If you would have told most Browns fans you'd be 1-1 after Dallas at home and Jacksonville on the road, they would have been like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. You'd sign up for 1-1. It's a fine way to start the year. Obviously, it's so much better than 0-2, and we've seen the numbers bear that out. I thought if you go offense, defense, special teams, there were different levels of bad against the Cowboys. I thought all three areas made an improvement, a significant improvement against the Jaguars. And when Kevin Stefanski talks about a team win, yes, it's the three phases. I thought it went beyond that. I thought it was, we saw so many guys on the roster play significant roles. And it started right away on that first long 16-play drive where you saw 2 extra linemen used. You saw 5 receivers on that drive, 3 running backs, 2 tight ends, where to me it felt like a real team effort from the jump.
Yeah, and you know what? It probably is going to need to be while they figure out the identity. All right, take a look at this. This is Deshaun Watson's pass chart against the Jaguars, next-gen stats. 22, 34, 186. He didn't throw a boatload downfield, but was on target, was on time. Kevin Stefanski talked about the day Deshaun Watson had against Jacksonville.
I thought offensively, Tom, and Deshaun obviously in particular, we played clean. We played on time, and I thought he spread the ball around, was very good in his reads really throughout the day, but kind of took what was there. If number 1 wasn't there, moved on to number 2 and played really clean.
Along those lines, he's always had to carry the load, regardless of where he is or was. Now that he's in his second year with you guys, does he seem to have a better grasp on he doesn't have to be the hero every time, that he has to, make good, smart plays, as you just referenced?
I think Deshaun understands how to win, first and foremost. And I think he understands that he'll do whatever it takes to win. I think he's like a lot of the great quarterbacks out there. They're prepared to do whatever it takes to find a way to win.
Scott, the first week, that offense just looked so disjointed, and at least I didn't feel like they were kind of making it up as they were going into the huddle yesterday. There was some purpose, some cohesion. I mean, 9-minute drives in the NFL will give you that look.
Yeah, it was certainly, the start was so much better, and that's the beginning point for me between week 1 and week 2. I thought Kevin Stefanski's scripted plays were really good. We probably saw all of them in a 16-play drive. There's a bigger commitment to the run game. And I don't know if that's a reaction to week one or just the Jaguars, the matchup you want to exploit with the run or whatever. You don't have David Njoku, so you want to run instead of pass as much. Whatever the case, I think the commitment to the run early helped settle everything down and took some pressure off Watson, which was important. It was more efficient. The operation was better. All of it, especially in the first half. Things got really stagnant in the second half. But, as bad as Watson looked in week one, and a lot of that was, to me, slow decision-making and not making the right read and hanging on to the ball forever. There was much less of that against the Jaguars. He did, especially on the first drive, but throughout, got rid of the ball on time most of the time. Seemed to make the right read. And it was a contrast. I don't know if you guys talked about it last week or even saw it, but Kurt Warner did a 55-minute breakdown of 19 Watson plays against Dallas where he just couldn't figure out why he was making the decisions he was making. And it felt almost night and day, week one to week two.
Well, the other thing that really stood out, Foreman got involved a whole lot earlier, and I'm hoping we see more of that because I think that is more effective.
Yeah, it's interesting. He didn't have a carry against the Cowboys. I think he played one snap. And then yesterday, he comes out, starts, I think he gets the first carry, winds up with 14 carries, only 42 yards. So he averages 3 a carry, which isn't great. Obviously, it's below average. But I think he gives you something that maybe Jerome Ford doesn't. And that's a straight-ahead runner, a move-the-pile runner. I don't think he's got breakaway speed, but you don't always need that. You need consistency. And then I think he's a good complement to Ford, who I thought looked good yesterday. He only carried 4 times, but 64 yards. And it wasn't just the 36-yarder on that fourth down. I went back and was watching it today. There looked to me like several, 6, 8-yard runs from Ford. I thought he was more aggressive and more, kind of put his foot in the ground and went, more decisive than he was in week one, even though I thought he was okay in week one.
Yeah, no, I would agree. He was better. I just think the combination kind of makes sense. I know you got this in your mailbag. Can Ken Dorsey transform the offense if he doesn't have complete control? I don't know if they're really trying to have Ken Dorsey transform it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I said. I don't think you should expect him to transform the offense because Kevin Stefanski has such a big role, as he should as the head coach, an offensive-minded head coach, and as a play caller. But I did appreciate the point of the question that there is a lot of talk about Ken Dorsey and everything he brings and as a new coordinator. And I don't think we're seeing a full getting the full Ken Dorsey experience because it's a collaboration with Stefanski and because Stefanski calls the plays. So if people are out there looking for this huge metamorphosis of the offense, I think they have to rein that in. And we've talked about that before. It's going to be way more 3 and 4 wides. And we've already seen that through 2 weeks. Way more shotgun. But they're not going to abandon the run. And at least not every week, right? The game plan could call, game plan specific. And they're not going to abandon 2 tight ends. So I think that's part of the meld of those two minds.
All right. You also wrote an article about Jameis Winston and the impact he had, especially on those 4th downs. Take us through that.
I mean, he played 3 snaps, and they were 3 hugely important snaps. 4th downs, right? And the first one was in Jacksonville territory, or still in Cleveland territory. So, he sneaks on the first one. Now the defense is expecting a sneak, so he hands off to Jerome Ford for 36 yards. Then he sneaks again, I think it was the 4th quarter. So he goes 3 for 3, doesn't throw one pass as a quarterback, but has an impact on the game. And those are such critical spots. You don't have to risk Watson's shoulder. And even before the shoulder, they weren't sneaking it, right? 2022 was Jacoby Brissett. 2023 was Harrison Bryant. So it's just, it must be something either Watson doesn't like to do or isn't good at. So the fact that Winston's a bigger body gives them that option. And Stefanski's shown enough variety that defenses can't just say, oh, it's going to be a sneak, because if they go all in on that, then they, burn the defense around the edges. So I thought he was really important. And then it was interesting today. I thought it was hysterical. Jerome Ford said in the huddle, they joke that it's like he's telling them a surprise when he's calling the play. And I tweeted out, and it's gotten all kinds of reaction. Like Ocho Cinco reacted to it. Michael Wood said that's true. Like, it's getting all this reaction because Jameis Winston, I think, is beloved across the league, and that's just kind of his personality.
All right, so some injury news of concern, actually. David Bell, the hip injury will require surgery. He's done for the year. Pierre Strong, week to week with a hamstring injury. Obo Okunrankwo cleared from concussion protocol. Then the other thing, Kevin Stefanski said Jack Conklin was close to playing yesterday. He was asked, would Wills and Conklin possibly be ready for week 3? And Stefanski said, yeah, potentially. Scott, again, James Hudson, it's not for lack of effort. Him at left tackle, there were some issues there again. I think the sooner you can get Conklin and or Wills back out there, it's going to make a big difference for the offensive line.
Yeah, there's no doubt that either one of those guys is an upgrade over James Hudson. Having said that, I thought Hudson was better yesterday. I mean, they only gave up 2 sacks. Watson was hit 8 times. That's not egregious. It was, he sacked, 6 times in the opener and hit 17 times. So it was much better. And there's reasons for it. I thought the protection was better. I thought Watson was better getting the ball out of his hand, like we talked about. The defensive, Jacksonville's defense wasn't as exotic, didn't bring a whole lot of different pressure looks like the Cowboys did. But you're right. I mean, so Hudson's fine. I think he's really battling out there, like the coaches like to say. But Conklin or Wills would be an upgrade. I feel like Conklin's still closer than Wills, although watching both of them practice Friday, I thought both looked good. I knew Wills wasn't going to, he was going to get ruled out. But I saw life in his legs, and I thought Conklin might play either the first 2 weeks. So whether or not it's against the Giants, maybe they give him one more week and then make the trip to Vegas and he starts in Vegas, or maybe they wait till week 5. But I do feel like it's close, a little close for Conklin, but close for both of them.
Yeah, and again, you want to make sure you give as much time as you can possibly give so that once you get him in, you're not putting him in, taking him out for 2 weeks, putting him in. So that's the reason they're trying to wait for that. Scott Petrek and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each. 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrek from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Love the show, especially on Victory Monday, when we much needed. I'm going to bring up the elephant in the room, though. What is going on with Amari Cooper? And I can't hardly believe it's all about him kind of pouting about the contract, because he needs to play good this year in order to try to get a better contract here or somewhere else next year. Bell's injury, is that going to maybe get Rash out there to see what he can do? Because Moore had a better game, but he's still not really living up to the second-round draft pick that we used on him. Judy, thank goodness we got him. He looked good. And the run game got better. Do you think that's because we have better blocking, or are we having better schemes to suit the running backs better? Just want to know what you think on all these things. Thank you. Go Browns. Woo, woo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, relative to the running, I think they used the big personnel, and I think that was really effective. You know, that you had Harris at the fullback. You had Zinter in there. I don't think they used that as much against Dallas. And I know Jacksonville's defensive line is pretty good. I think Cowboys' defensive line is a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think those were both factors. Against the Cowboys, they might have only gone 2 tight ends once. And I don't think they went big personnel like jumbo at all. It was all 3 receivers and a few 4 receiver sets. So that was a big change. It felt like back to Kevin Stefanski, the offense of, the end of last year and in his first, I guess just overall over his first 4 years. They did a lot of that. The Nick Harris is fullback and moving him in motion, the backup center. So I think that helps. You get big bodies in there. Down and distance helped a lot. I know they still had a ton of penalties, but it wasn't 1st and 15 and 2nd and 10 all day. And when you're not there, you can try to run it. 1st and 15, it almost is impossible to run it. So I think all those things played a factor. Foreman getting more time was a factor, and just a bigger commitment to it.
All right, so the caller did ask about Amari Cooper, and here's the numbers that he's kind of referring to. 2 games, 5 catches, 27 yards, 4 drops. Critical 3rd down, jumping backwards after he had the first down, so he caught it and went behind the sticks, didn't get the first down. Again, I was thinking the same thing, Scott. I don't know. I don't think Cooper is pouting about the contract. I don't think that's it at all. I could be wrong. It might be as simple as a small sample size. I don't know. It's concerning, though.
Yeah, I'm working on a story about it right now because it really stood out to me, especially yesterday following, the Cowboys game. You just don't see Amari Cooper drop a ton of passes. And to drop the would-be touchdown against the Cowboys, and that one didn't matter because the game was out of hand. But still, he should have caught it. Yesterday, he drops a pass that, probably would have taken down the 10-yard line. Could lead to a touchdown. I think that they settled for a field goal. He just looked like he jumped and he didn't really need to jump. He just seems out of sync, not quite himself. But I don't think it's the contract issue or even the trade reports, with Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers during training camp. I don't think that's it. He's too much of a professional. I'm watching, like today I went back, I watched every snap of his, and it looks like he's playing hard to me. He's running hard. Even on that play the caller mentioned, the 3rd and 3 where he gives up a yard. I mean, he's running hard there. And he should have fallen forward, but he thinks he's going to be able to get around that guy. It just feels like everything that can go wrong right now for Cooper is going wrong. He and Watson don't appear to be in sync. But, I asked Kevin Stefanski about it, asked Jerome Ford about it. They're confident that they'll figure it out. And so am I, because Cooper is that good. I don't think he's lost a step. He's 30 years old now. I don't think that's the reason. He's still getting open. 4 drops, we could argue if they're all 4 of those were drops, but it's clearly not what they need him to be. And we talk about the offensive struggles. A lot of those were predictable. I could not have envisioned Cooper getting off to this start.
Yeah, no, I 27 yards after 2 games, I would have said the Browns are 0-2. If you would have told me Amari Cooper's numbers, they lost the first 2. So they do need to figure that out without question. This is also kind of interesting. We told you in week 1, Browns had the least amount of pre-snap motion. Now in week 2, the Browns used pre-snap motion 49.2% of the plays. That ranked 20th in the league. 23.1% motion at the snap, 13th. They were dead last in the NFL. So you're starting to see some of that, and I'm sure it'll probably increase more and more as they open up and expand what they're doing with this offense.
Yeah, and Kevin Stefanski says it's, again, a week-by-week thing. I don't get too hung up on that. I know some people do, and I get it. I think what's interesting to me at this point with that stat is when they try to get fancy is when they get a lot of penalties. And, they'll have, and to me, maybe that's everybody's to blame for that. But I think that's a Deshaun Watson thing. Like, if he's got to be in control of all 11 guys. So when they go to the line of scrimmage, he's got to have everybody pause for a second. I feel like he's sending guys in motion too quickly, and then it looks like there's two guys in motion at the same time. And unless everybody stops before the snap, it's going to be a penalty, and one of those guys is supposed to be in motion, so he's not going to stop. So I think Watson's got to be cleaner in the operation.
Yeah, without question. So you mentioned the penalties, and that's one thing that absolutely has to change. Browns are the most penalized team in the NFL through 2 weeks. A few penalties ahead of their AFC North brethren. Pittsburgh is second at 5 less penalties, and Ravens have 6 less penalties. Kevin Stefanski talked about all the self-inflicted wounds today.
Really disappointed there, Cam. We need to be better in that area. It's hard to win. We don't need to make it harder on ourselves, and we did in a bunch of areas. So we can just identify and correct. We'll keep hammering it, and we got. But until we do it, we're just going to make life hard, and we don't want to do that.
Is there anything that's ongoing from having to learn from this new point of emphasis with those, maybe the shifts? I know there's illegal formations were a little bit more frequent last week, but is there anything that's carried over that you're still trying to work through?
Not really. We know the rules. An illegal shift wiped out a touchdown for them as well. And so it's so important to be about our business. And the more pre-snap motion and shifts and type things that you do, you really have to be on top of it. So it's a point of emphasis for us.
And again, it's very easy to connect the dots between the motion and the penalties they're getting. So you kind of understand why they might be ramping it in slowly.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's all part of it. And there's some moving pieces. Jerry Jeudy's new. The system's a little bit new, like we've talked about a million times. So, yeah, I think it will probably ramp up. I don't envision it, and I could be wrong, but I don't envision it getting to the point where there's motion 80% of the time. I just don't think it goes there. I think they want to be faster than that too, and a lot of motion slows it down, right? You can't play with the same tempo if you got all kinds of motion. So, maybe they peak at 55% of the time for 1 week, but I don't think it's going to be, one of the teams that lead the league in the pre-snap stuff.
Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as brownzone.com. And I'm going to step aside, take another time out, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yippee, guys. So what? We won a game. It should have been a game that we blew the team out. We come out firing as usual. Our two-time coach of the year, he runs 10 scripted plays, and they're awesome. We take the big lead. Uh-oh, the other team adjusted. Now what do I do? Oh, well, I'm going to sit on it, and hopefully we win. That's all we ever do with this guy. So I'm not giving him that much credit. I'll give him a little more. They looked a little better, but still had a bunch of penalties and all this stuff. Once again, I don't even know why Watson's playing. He's probably going to end up getting suspended in the league, and we're not going to be playing him anymore. So we really should be sitting down. Once again, so what? We won. Yippee. I'm glad. But we still got problems. Thanks, guys.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, we get it. He doesn't like Kevin Stefanski. Yes, the Browns have problems. So do most of the other teams in the NFL. It was a really, really weird week of football. Yep.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it's week 2. Teams are still growing into who they are. It's growing pains for everybody. So, I think you have to maybe temper your expectations for perfect football at this stage of the season. And, I'm torn about the Stefanski, the script versus the non-script. I think he deserves all the credit in the world for being such a good play caller early in games. With that script, they have a ton of success doing that. I don't know if I blame him when the production drops, because maybe it's the players who struggle to adjust. Maybe they're the ones that are really good because they know the plays they're going to run, and then when they have to react on the fly, aren't as good. And it could be a combination, but I think Stefanski's so smart and such a good play caller that I don't think that's the problem. I don't think all of a sudden his play calls fall apart in the second, third, fourth quarter. I just don't. That's my opinion. And then I forgot, the guy had something else he said that I struggled with. It slipped my mind, but there's one other point I disagreed with.
Yeah. You wrote an article about the defense too. Last year there was problems on the road, in the red zone. Take us through that article. I mean, defense was really good yesterday. They gave up the touchdown was a 66-yard, play set it up. That's going to happen when you get after the quarterback in the NFL like this defense does. There's really good athletes on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I was going to say the suspension thing with Watson. That's what I was going to refer to. If he gets suspended, I don't think it happens this year. So from a strictly football perspective, I think it makes sense to play your starting quarterback, especially if you think he's going to be there all season long. Yeah, the defense, to me, not only did they play better than against the Cowboys, and I thought they were good against the Cowboys except for those 2 drives, but those were enough to put the team in a big hole, not enough to support an offense that wasn't doing anything. So it took a jump there. Also, it was the first road test of the year. And how many times did we talk last year about how different it was, the defense, home versus road? It's 13.9 points at home, 32 point something on the road. Yesterday, first road test, played really well. Last year, the number 1 ranked defense was last in the league in touchdown percentage inside the red zone. Over 70% of trips by opponents turned into touchdowns. And yesterday, Jacksonville was 1 for 4 inside the red zone, including twice when I think they got to the 2-yard line, got pushed back, and had to settle for field goals. Either one of those changes the entire game, especially midway through the fourth quarter. They get down to the 2-yard line. It's 16-10. A touchdown, an extra point there, give Jacksonville a lead for the first time. Yet the Browns force them to a field goal. It's 16-13, and you still have the lead, still in control. So I thought the defense was phenomenal in those 2 areas specifically. And then the pressure rate was over 40%. They get 4 sacks, and then the critical one for the safety that takes a field goal in overtime out of the equation.
Yeah, you can't really ask much more. If you want to nitpick at the defense, it would be don't allow the big play. That's about it. And I'll take a big play every once in a while if it's going to give me 5 sacks and a lot of negative tackle. They had a boatload of tackle for losses in addition to those things. This is from NFL.com, what we learned from Week 2's games. For the Browns, they say Schwartz's defense returns to form. At halftime, Jacksonville had just 81 yards of total offense and had possessed the ball for less than 10 minutes. Prior to a 26-yard completion to Brenton Strange on a 3rd and 10, with 10:09 left in the third, Trevor Lawrence had completed 5 of 6 passes for 16 yards. Again, that's a guy that's pretty well thought of in Trevor Lawrence. I didn't really, even when they cut it to 6, I was like, all right, they gave up a big play. I didn't think the defense, I was never worried about the defense. I thought, they might kick a field goal and send it to overtime, but they're not scoring another touchdown on the Browns defense was kind of the mindset I had in paying attention to that.
Yeah, I completely agree with how I was feeling about it. The 66-yarder, Greg Newsome's in one-on-one coverage. I think they probably max protected. They gave Lawrence time. And Newsome was in good position, and Thomas was just physical at the top of the route and got a little separation there, made a good play. It was a great throw. But that was their only, that was the big play, right? So I didn't feel like the defense was ever in jeopardy. I thought the game might be in jeopardy because weird stuff was happening. You get the string of, they look like they're going in to cement the game. They get the face mask on Foreman, and they're backing up, and then Watson makes a stupid throw instead of taking a sack after they get the ball back, following the safety. And it just felt like this is just a little too weird. One of those games where you go, how did they lose? The defense played great. But I wasn't worried about the defense, but I still wondered, is there a way that this can backfire on them, even with the defense playing as well as it was?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. There were, again, the penalties. I think it was 12 penalties. And those are the one thing, they didn't turn the ball over. Didn't create a turnover, but did not turn. And if with this defense, if you don't give the team extra possessions, you're in pretty good shape to win the football game. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. Also can check him out on brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Here's an idea. How about the Browns consider trading Myles Garrett to the New York Jets for Hassan Reddick and a draft pick, a high-round draft pick? And that way we don't lose too much production and we get enough draft capital for next year to draft Quinn Ewers.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, I do not like the idea of trading Myles Garrett even a little bit. And I be careful about the rookie quarterbacks that you draft. I mean, Caleb Williams, we're seeing that. Even Jaden Daniels. Those were guys that, Caleb Williams was a guy everybody thought, elite, once in a generation. And it's a struggle in the NFL.
Yeah, it is. And who knows? I mean, it's 2 games. But I like the guy thinking out of the box. I get where he's going. But, Myles Garrett, to me, he's really matured as a player, as a person, as a leader. I just don't think you can trade the best defensive player in the league. I just don't think you can do that. Reddick, the fact that he's holding out and wants a contract after the trade, it would give me pause right there. And he's not as good a player as Myles Garrett. So I get chasing a quarterback. They're not going to trade Myles Garrett, and I would not trade Myles Garrett.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm just hesitant about any quarterback that you draft. Those are, the Joe Burrows of the world are pretty few and far between. So we'll see. This is from ESPN Analytics. Current projection to win the AFC North after yesterday's games. Steelers 31.5%, Bengals 23.6%, Ravens 21.3%, Browns 20%. The difference between the Browns, the Bengals, and Ravens is probably that the Bengals and Ravens have already played the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Browns still have them on their schedule. But, the Steelers are 2-0, and they've scored 1 touchdown in 2 games. That defense is pretty good, but the offense is kicking a lot of field goals.
Yeah, it is. And they got to figure out quarterback. That's the only thing that surprises me a little bit is I get Pittsburgh's 2-0. I think I'd still take the Browns ahead of the Steelers. The other thing that's really interesting about that is we talk so much about that 0-2 statistic, and I think it's just under 10% of the teams that start 0-2 make the playoffs. So for the Bengals and Ravens to be, favored to win the division, I think is interesting. I saw a gambling site said the Bengals and Ravens were still favored to make the playoffs despite 0-2. It just shows you how much, Vegas likes those two teams.
Yeah, especially and when you look at them, it's got to be Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow that the quote unquote betting money is on because the quarterback's important.
Right, and I think it also proves, and we were having this discussion in Jacksonville. Some of the writers, not every 0-2 is the same. The Carolina 0-2 is a whole different world than Cincinnati, Baltimore 0-2. So if you've got a good team and a good quarterback or a great quarterback, 0-2 can turn into 4-2 pretty fast.
All right, so the Browns had the ball yesterday for 34 and a half minutes. They were +9 time of possession. Unless you turn the ball over, +9 time of possession in the NFL is going to equate to wins 95% of the time.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting. It's one of those things like if you run it 35 times, you have a great win percentage. Well, some of that is because you have a lead and then you run to kill the clock. It's not if you just run it 35 times, you win. And I think it's a little bit like that with time of possession. But I think your point is strong. If you only give the other team, whatever it is, 25 minutes to score, or 20 minutes, they have a lot harder time. And we saw that in the first half. I mean, the game got shorter in the first half because the Browns took forever and had 3 long drives that all turned into points. And they had more than 20 minutes of time of possession in the first half. So, you do need the explosive plays, and those can, because it's hard to put 10, 12, 14 play drives together. But it is a good recipe, and it keeps your defense fresh.
Yeah, the other thing is it makes the other offense feel a sense of urgency, which plays right into Jim. That you want them to feel like we got to go back and throw the football because that defensive line is teeing off. All right, Browns 1-1, 3 games ahead. They have pretty good shot at winning. You got the Giants, Raiders, and Commanders coming up in that order. Giants at home, Raiders and Commanders on the road. What do you think we need to see in the next 3 games to kind of set the stage for, what's a pretty brutal back half of the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, you need to pile up the wins. And this is the softest part of the schedule. We've gone over that. And it's just, now that it's here, it still is. The Giants, there's talk about Brian Daboll being on the hot seat. Washington, their rookie quarterback's having issues now, or I almost called them Oakland. Las Vegas had a huge win yesterday. So, maybe that's not as easy a win as it looked, but, it's a crazy league, period. But regardless, this is the time the Browns have to make hay. So besides stacking some wins, you need to see continued growth in the offense. And that's Deshaun Watson. It's Amari Cooper playing better. It's figuring out the protection and maybe having one of your, Conklin or Wills at left tackle. Like, that's where I feel they can make the most growth and where they need to make the most growth before you start going against Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert and all those guys, all those quarterbacks that are coming.
When you look at the Browns offense, do you feel a little bit more? I mean, after last week, it was like, man, well, I couldn't figure out what they were trying to do against the Cowboys. Do you feel a little bit better about kind of the scheme and what they're doing and the way they want to attack things?
Well, to me, it was more about Deshaun Watson in week 1. I thought it was less about the scheme. I thought there were plays to be made, and he didn't make them. So I'm sure the coaching had a lot to do with that in week 2, whether they simplified things or just gave him things he was more comfortable with. Whatever it was, he looked so much better inside the pocket, making the decisions like we talked about. So I thought that was the biggest jump. And of course, they're intertwined, but I thought it was less about scheme, more about quarterback.
Fair enough. Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, David.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Also, check him out on the internet, brownzone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones. Diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation. I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yo, this is Rico. Listen, a win is a win. So don't get me wrong. I am extremely happy and grateful that we found a way to win on the road especially. But the offensive line, in my humble opinion, played under par once again. Watson's performance, I'm going to give him a C-, C+, because he's on the winning side of things, and he looked much better than he did week 1, which was a very low bar to clear to begin with. Shout out to the defense for saving this team. Last season on the road, they were getting smoked every game, giving up 30-plus points per game. Today, they played pretty well. And to be honest, they played pretty well last week too. Like I said, I'm happy with the win. We're not going to remember that we barely won in week 2. All we're going to see is the overall record by the end of the season. Just improve, watch the tape, get better, and us as fans just enjoy the ride. It's a roller coaster. Let's go. Go Browns. Whoop, whoop.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, it's a road win against a team that will probably win 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 games. So that's important. It's a tiebreaker. It's an AFC team.
Yeah, and any road win you can get in the NFL is a good one, especially considering the Browns have to go on a pretty long road trip after this upcoming game against the Giants. They got to go to Vegas, they got to go to DC, and they got to go to Philadelphia 3 weeks in a row. So any road win you can get in the NFL is a good one. And the biggest takeaway, going back to what Rico was talking about, the defense on the road looked like the defense that we saw at home for the better part of last season. The road struggles obviously were a big topic of discussion throughout the offseason, and yesterday they looked like they were playing back at Huntington Bank Field out there, flying around, getting to the football. I know they gave up the touchdown drive. They were struggling a little bit late in the third quarter into the fourth before Alex Wright safety, but they were moving around and making plays. And with Deshaun Watson, I would say a C+, maybe a B- is kind of a fair grade. I mean, he started the game real well, 7 of 8, on that opening drive for I believe 83 yards. He was good at the end of the game. He had a couple big throws to Jerry Jeudy, including that scramble that I'm sure Browns fans have seen a couple times. But the middle of the game was a little concerning. They kind of bogged down, and I think that's kind of what allowed Jacksonville to get back in the game. But it was good enough of a performance from the quarterback to get the win, especially with how the defense was playing.
So I know you wrote an article, Fact or Fiction. So is Sunday's performance, if we get that from Deshaun Watson, week in, week out, is that good enough to win consistently?
For now, yes. And I try not to hedge with these. I try to be very definitive, and I'm going to hedge a little bit because the schedule for the Browns is pretty soft coming up. Of course, they got the Giants coming up this coming Sunday, looking like a team that could be picking the top 5 again in April. Then you got to go to Vegas, which just beat Baltimore in Baltimore. So that's going to be easily the trickiest of the 3 games. And then you go to Washington. You got to play that defensive front. You got to be able to handle Jane Daniels and Brian Robinson. No easy road games in the NFL, but those are all extremely winnable games. And I think if Deshaun Watson could play like he did yesterday, where he's able to make some throws, lead some scoring drives, and just as importantly, don't turn the football over, they're going to be in a position to win maybe all 3 of these games. But when you get into the meat of the schedule after that, you got the Eagles after that. You've got the Bengals right after that. You've got the Ravens coming up later as well. That schedule gets tough after this 3-game stretch. I know you have Bengals, Ravens, Chargers at home right before the bye week, but those are 3 very good teams who all still have playoff aspirations, especially with how the Chargers have started the season with Jim Harbaugh as their head coach. So Deshaun Watson's going to need to continue to improve, week over week over week. And the growth he made from week 1 to week 2, I don't think that can be overstated, just how good it was for the Browns that he looked the way he did. He looked confident. He looked closer to Deshaun Watson we saw in 2023. We know he's a slow starter, and these next 3 games, I think he's just got to continue to get better, but that kind of Deshaun Watson's not going to be enough to win in Philadelphia. You're going to need him to be great. They're going to need great quarterback play eventually to win some of these big games. But for now, I think you can get away with average Deshaun Watson if he's protecting the football like he did yesterday.
All right. So Browns' time of possession on their first drive yesterday was 9:14. 9 minutes, 14 seconds on that first drive. Last week, they had the ball for only 10 minutes and 4 seconds the entire first half. That shows you the difference. And they won the time of possession. They were +9 time of possession. You're going to win a lot of football games if you have the ball that long and don't turn it over onto short fields.
And the other big thing is, running the football. I think that was a complaint I had with the Dallas game was they got away from the run way too early in that game. They tried to go more pass heavy, which I thought was the last thing they should have done against a Dallas defense that is very good at coming downhill. And sometimes the best thing to do with those defenses is run the football right at them. Look at what the New Orleans Saints just did to them yesterday. And the Jaguars have a good run defense, one of the better run defenses in the NFL, and the Browns did a very good job on them. 125 yards rushing. They had 36, I believe, on that Jerome Ford run. That was their only double-digit yardage run of the game, but consistently getting 3, 4, 5 yards at a time. I believe the average, if you take that out, is maybe 3 and about 3.3 to 3.5. Do that 3 times, you're going to get a first down. So anytime you kind of get in that sweet spot, you're moving the chains, you're getting second and shorts, third and shorts, which this team needs to continue to do. I think, especially these next couple games to keep the momentum going. And when you continue to get first downs, when you run the football well, you grind that clock down, you keep that other offense on the sideline. That's a tried and true formula for success more often than not in the NFL. And it was good to see that the Browns committed to the run game, and especially getting Deontay Foreman involved with 14 carries after he only played just 2 total snaps in week 1.
All right, so this is from ESPN. Questions, takeaways from each NFL team in week 2 for the Browns. Is this closer to what the Browns' new offense wants to be? Browns' offense wasn't perfect by any means, put forth a much better effort than the week 1 no-show. Ran the ball well, frequently brought in extra linemen to get the ground game going. Penalties continue to be an issue, but the Browns got cleaner play from Deshaun Watson. Describe the game in 2 words. Undisciplined play after the Browns were flagged for 11 accepted penalties in week 1. They committed 13 Sunday. And then early prediction for next week. Browns offense will break out against the Giants. Unit wasn't great against Jacksonville, but showed signs of life in the first half. The Browns could finally get one or both of their top tackles back next week. Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin could help jumpstart the unit. They got to stop with the penalty. They are the most penalized football team in football by a lot, by 5 penalties.
Yeah, I kept thinking, when they had that 2nd and 36 in the fourth quarter, I kept thinking back to the days, when I'm playing NFL Blitz, you start 1st and 30. That 3rd and 36 is hard enough in NFL Blitz. You do that in a regular NFL game, you're in a world of hurt. And, just a lot of, again, discipline, I think, has got to be something that they continue to focus on, especially the offensive line. I think there were 3 or 4 different guys that got called for holding penalties throughout the game. Joel Bitonio got one, Ethan Posick got one. And I think it's just got to be cleaner. And I think that's part of the process of this new offense continuing to evolve. Obviously, it took a step forward from week 1 to week 2, where Sunday it looked like a much more functional offense. Now the next step's got to be, you got to clean up the edges. You got to stop. You can't keep self-inflicting these penalties on you, because eventually they're going to come back to bite you. And we saw that obviously in the Dallas game, when they kept getting in the 3rd and longs, those situations that happened again yesterday, and the Browns ended up getting away with it. The average distance on 3rd down is just way too long, and penalties play such a big part in it. You got to be able to stay on schedule, and you got to be able to not hurt yourself with penalties. And that's ultimately something that's got to be addressed, especially, coming up in these next couple games. Yes, you can get away with it, but you do not want to make a habit of it against weaker teams and have those teams hang around, because if that kind of happens, then you go up against a team like Philadelphia. You can't commit 13 penalties if you're going to Philadelphia, because the Eagles are too good of a team and they are going to make you pay for it.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll look ahead a little bit to the Browns and Giants matchup, plus some AFC North news. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each. 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Some news out of Kansas City. So the Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco, injured yesterday, and he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. So the Chiefs are expected to bring in Kareem Hunt, played for the Browns, and then before that, the Chiefs on Tuesday for a visit. So it'll be interesting to see if Kareem Hunt does in fact end up signing back with the Chiefs. Pacheco, 6 to 8 weeks is what he is expected to miss.
Yeah, and that's obviously a blow for Kansas City. Obviously, they're 2-0. They got that controversial win yesterday against the Bengals, but Pacheco is just so important for what they do. He's just such a tough runner in the middle. And right now, looking at the depth chart, with him gone, basically they're down to Carson Steele and Samaje Perine. Steele was a rookie, and he had a couple late carries in that game. Perine's a veteran, so putting Kareem Hunt in there, to kind of fill the Pacheco role to an extent as far as a short yardage back makes sense for them.
All right. From that Fact or Fiction article that you wrote, why do you think the Ravens are in bigger trouble in the AFC North than the Bengals, both starting 0-2, each of them with a loss to the Chiefs?
First, I'd like to say, if the Chiefs get Kareem Hunt, of course. I didn't mean to say like they were. But anyway, talking about the AFC North, I just want to clarify. But talking about the AFC North, yeah, I think that loss the Ravens had with the Raiders was a shocker. I think, that's a loss that I think we saw quite a few times with Baltimore in the past few years, particularly last year with the Colts and the Browns, where they had a fourth quarter lead and then blew it and just not able to get the job done. And Baltimore is a team I was always a little more concerned about than I think most people. Obviously, when you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, you cannot write this team off. They're going to win plenty of football games, but this was a defense that lost a lot from last season, including Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator of Seattle. And in the first 2 games, they had given up 53 points. They gave up 26 yesterday to Minshew and the Raiders, who were coming across the country. You know how West Coast teams have typically struggled in 1 o'clock games. It didn't look like that yesterday. And then you look at Baltimore's schedule. it's going to get harder before it gets easier, because this week they have to go to Dallas, then they host the Bills, then they go to Cincinnati. And even before their bye week, they have to play the Buccaneers, Browns, Steelers, Chargers, Eagles, and the Bengals for a second time. That is an incredibly difficult schedule for any team to deal with. Now, as far as the Bengals go, they lost a heartbreaker in Kansas City. That's going to happen to a lot of teams. And yes, they had a bad loss at home against the Patriots. But when I look at what the Bengals have coming up, 3 of their next 4 games are against teams that could easily be picking in the top 5, top 10 of the draft. The Commanders, Panthers, and Giants in those next few games. 2 of those 3 games are on the road, but you would expect that Cincinnati, with a team as talented as they are, that's a better chance for them to stack wins and kind of get back into this division race, because as bleak as it kind of looks for both teams, you get on a nice winning streak, and all of a sudden you can catch the Steelers, who haven't really been tested defensively much this season, and the Browns, who still have their questions on offense, and they're still trying to get more cohesion there. But if I'm the Bengals and the Ravens, I'm more worried about getting back in the AFC North race if I'm Baltimore, just because this defense has really struggled. There's questions about the offensive line, and this schedule looks incredibly difficult.
All right, so you wrote an article, 3 things to know about Cleveland's Week 3 opponent, so Browns versus Giants, a preview. Number 1, Malik Neighbors has star potential. That's the Giants' rookie wide receiver. Number 2, run defense remains an issue. And number 3, the Giants' season could get away in a hurry if they lose in Cleveland. So take us through those.
Let's start with Malik Neighbors. This was a guy, I think there was buzz right before the NFL draft that people were wondering whether Malik Neighbors should go ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft. And Arizona obviously decided to go with Harrison, who put on a show yesterday against the Rams. But Malik Neighbors has been really good as well. Already so far this season, 15 catches, 193 yards, and a touchdown. Yesterday in Washington, had 10 for $127 and a score. He's basically the guy right now as far as the skill position players go in New York, especially after letting Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles. I know they have a solid running back in Devin Singletary, but right now, if you're the Browns in that secondary, Neighbors is the guy that you should really be putting your first and second priorities on, because he's the guy right now who can hurt you the most. And he looks pretty darn good out there. Again, almost 100 yards a game so far in his started career. Pretty good. So that's number 1. Number 2, run defense is a problem. The Giants last year ranked 29th in the NFL in yards allowed on the ground. Started off okay, giving up 111 to the Vikings. It's not a great number, but it's also not awful either. Yesterday, the Commanders gained 215 yards on the ground. Brian Robinson Jr., who I think is a very underrated running back, 17 carries, 133 yards. And if you look at the video, the highlight video that's in the story as well, he just kind of sneaks through a hole and runs for about 30-plus yards. So the Browns, they ran well against a Jacksonville defense that has been good against the run, especially dating back to 2023. This is a chance for that run game to continue to get better, especially if that offensive line continues to get healthy. If they can get Jack Conklin or Jedrick Wills back and plug one of them in at left tackle, it's a chance for that group to really get things going. And number 3, I think we can understand the Giants, are kind of one of the weaker teams in the NFL that a lot of people thought they were going to be picking very early in the draft, potentially one of those teams looking for a quarterback. But when you look at what they have coming up after this trip to Cleveland, it gets nasty pretty quickly. They host Dallas on a Thursday night, go to Seattle, have home games against the Bengals and the Eagles, and then they take on Pittsburgh on a Monday night. So there's a chance before they host Washington in Week 9 that they may go in that game potentially 0-8, and then they go to Germany to take on Carolina in Week 10. So this is a very difficult schedule that the Giants are navigating. Wouldn't shock me if this was a game they really, that they really gave a strong effort for, even just above just a traditional professional effort, knowing what's coming ahead of them. But, if the Giants don't win this game, it could legitimately be a little bit before they get their first win of the season.
All right. So through 2 games, Jerry Jeudy, new Browns receiver, 8 catches, and he has 98 yards, also a touchdown catch. 14 targets, so there looks to be a little bit of chemistry between he and Deshaun Watson in the open field as well. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, especially yesterday. I think I remember we were talking about in the preseason that one of the questions was how Deshaun Watson's going to establish chemistry with Jerry Jeudy. And so far, it's been pretty seamless. I mean, Jeudy caught the only touchdown pass that Deshaun Watson's thrown. That was all the way back in week 1 in Dallas. But yesterday, he made a lot of key plays. He had that great tip catch along the sideline to convert a 2nd and 20. He had that 3rd down crossing route. Everybody talks about that scramble throw that Watson made for 5 yards. That doesn't happen if Jerry Jeudy doesn't make that crossing pattern catch for a 1st down. And what we've seen in these 2 games is what made Jerry Jeudy a 1st-round talent out of Alabama. He's pretty fast, and he's got some pretty good hands. With Amari Cooper struggling the first 2 games of the season, with David Njoku dealing with his ankle injury, it's been good for the Browns, and that Jerry Jeudy has stepped up and played as well as he has so far. It's been a bright spot, and you would imagine as the season continues to go on, maybe Jerry Jeudy gets a little more involvement in this offense as he continues to get more familiarity with his quarterback and Ken Dorsey's system. No reason that this combination shouldn't continue to do as well as it has. And to see Jeudy have 73 yards yesterday, that's such a great sign for, where this offense can go going forward.
Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Really good stuff. Does a lot of previews and some information about the AFC North and Browns opponents. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.